Hello everybody and welcome to yet another edition of the Diversified Semantic Layer. I am joined by a fellow DSLayered long timer Josh Fletcher. Hey Josh, how are you going?
Good, Clint. How are you, mate?
Good man, good. And the one and only Mr. Corey Adams, Oz Bob, currently living in Auckland, New Zealand. Corey, how's it going? And he's frozen. The pressure became too much.
Don't push that button again.
Okay, so you see, this is, I think, to start off the podcast is a good way. You don't let end users touch your system because that's what happens. How are you going, Corey?
Huh?
How are you going, my friend?
I'm going good, mate. I'm good.
So today we're going to talk about BI 4.2, and all three of us were involved in ramp up and going in live. Just to cover my good friends' butts, I think we can just say that their opinions are the opinions of their own and not the companies that they work for or their employers or employees, however which way it goes. So just please bear that in mind. So before, as we always do, before we get going, should we just chat about what's happening in the industry, what's news? Josh, anything on your side?
No, I'm keeping my head down because I'm so busy with projects, but I think there's a few Asia-Pac conferences coming up later this year. There's SAP Insider and there's also Mastering BI.
Yep.
And obviously there was a lot of stuff that just came out of Sapphire that everyone's still talking about.
Still trying to process. Are you going to be at any of those events speaking?
I'm not sure yet. Not sure.
TV. Okay. What's happening in the land of the long white cloud?
Can say nothing, but nothing of note. But that's completely the opposite, really. In the BI space, we're very much head down, bum up, cementing in our 4.2 implementation, and we're just, I guess, fighting the good fight with user adoption and just making sure things stick. I don't have a whole lot of bandwidth beyond that. Looking forward eagerly to Lumira 1.31 and the direct HANA connectivity from the BI platform, which should be good. But other than that, no, it's very much bedding down what we've got.
So I know from your perspective, from a social, that you run the Analytics SIG in New Zealand. Any events coming up that anybody needs to know about? I do know that there's sort of an innovation breakfasty thing on I think the 4th of August in Auckland. Any events coming up for the local folks, Corey?
We're looking to hold a SIG event probably around the October, November timeframe. Looking to go off the back of the mastering series for analytics in Melbourne. That tends to bring down a lot of the SAP folk to the Southern Hemisphere, and we'll try and piggyback off some of that, I think, and try and get a SIG event there. Also coinciding with the Strategic Advisory Council. So,
have those dates been locked down yet for Auckland?
No, not yet. You could probably expect something a little bit firmer out in the next week or two.
Okay.
And of course, we've got to try and sort you out to come over and tell us all the things we need to know.
And the only other event for me that comes to mind is the SORG Summit, which is in Sydney for 2 days, early September. I think I'm speaking twice there. So I think that's it in terms of community news and what's happening here. From a push to market, also quite more from a partner perspective, the BusinessObjects cloud training is happening. From the partner perspective, so I'm going to go to Sydney in about a month's time to do that for 2 days, which I'm pretty excited about. Did any of you guys do the Open SAP course on BusinessObjects Cloud?
No.
No? Geez, you guys actually working for once.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, if you haven't checked it out, do it. It's actually really good. Okay, so let's talk about 4.2. Let's get to the chase. Both of us were on ramp up. Josh, do you want to maybe just let everybody know what exactly ramp up is before we jump into it?
Sure. So ramp up, I think, is a really great process where you can effectively get early adopter access to the software. and it's a partnership with SAP where you set up a more formalized feedback sessions on a regular basis, and they help you get through to deployment into a production environment. There's obviously the early adopter aspect, but then that both has pros and cons. But also it means that any issues you raise that stop you from going live will definitely get addressed as part of that ramp-up process. So it was a good and bad thing. We had, this is the first time we had done that, and overall we were actually quite happy with the outcome. We had some internal issues and our go live was delayed. But the thing to remember is that I believe SAP are KPI'd in terms of the number of users they take through to productive use as part of the ramp up. And so until they can get a certain number of customers through, they actually won't release the software for general availability. So if you like being on the bleeding edge, then that's the way to go.
For sure. And did you also have a weekly call with SAP just in terms of progress and roadblocks and all that kind of stuff?
Yep, we did, yeah. And that was really useful.
So Corey, I know you still have the scars of a 4.0 ramp up. Do you just want to talk about the difference between, I mean, I think one of the, from my understanding, the big difference is you didn't have to have a project sponsor. There was some difference between the 4.0 and 4.2 ramp ups. Maybe just give us some insight of the comparison between the two.
Yeah, so I don't know whether it speaks very well for my level of intelligence to go from a 4.0 ramp up that was very problematic to volunteering for a 4.0 or any other one for that matter. The difference for us this time was we weren't required to have a ramp up coach, which reduced our costs. So yeah, that from an organisational perspective, that was the only real difference. In terms of the experience, it was a lot better. I mean, I won't say it was a smooth road, but I can say that I felt a lot more supported, and particularly with EV's involvement. I guess having a steadfast partner as well as the support from SAP changed the overall experience for us. The only real big issue we had, I guess, or no, not really, that's not fair. The only lasting issue we have is, of course, our Lamira server is not quite working, but technically that wasn't part of the ramp up anyway. So I mean, we had a successful outcome for our promoted go live dates. There's no real issues with the servers. The support was a problem, and for that reason, I don't know if I'd do it again. The SAP support, to be clear, and I think that's more of a geographical challenge than anything else.
So I think that's probably quite a good point to focus in on. I mean, especially for ramp up and I guess just a heads up to anybody who wants to go live is if you are in this part of the world, I've realized since moving here is that you generally have a day delay from support because especially from a New Zealand point of view, if we were logging incidents, or Josh, I don't know, you WA, so you must let us know. Pretty much someone from India would pick that up, but there would always be that day lag, even if it was very high. Was that something that you had as well from a support perspective? And I think it's also very important for anybody who's looking to 4.2 is just to buffer in that time, because you're not going to get that immediate response.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, we're only a few hours ahead of India, and we're kind of, I think, in a similar time zone to China. So through the ramp up where we did raise a few incidents. I think there was only one or two that would have stopped us from going live, which they resolved with patches and so on. That did take a little bit of time, and that's where we used the weekly check-ins, and that wasn't so concerning for us. We actually did hit some issues in our go live that SAP jumped on, through the ramp up, and also our account manager, and we had immediate access to support staff in both India and China. So I found, and maybe that's just my time zone being 8 hours plus GMT, but we were able to talk to people through the day. Maybe only missing the first couple of hours of the morning, really, where we wouldn't be able to get anyone. But once we hit like 10, 11 a.m., then the big people available. So.
Which was kind of, I guess, 5 p.m. in New Zealand when we were doing the project from Corey's perspective, which was the end of that. And I mean, just from your data source perspective, not connecting to BW, just a classic EDW, if I understand.
Correct. Yeah. Primarily Oracle data sources, Oracle 11, and a little bit of SQL Server. Yeah. But next time it's going to include BW. So.
That's fun.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think, both of you guys have had production running now for a couple of months. I know Corey's been through a financial year end. Corey, you guys came from 4.0 to 4.2. From a stability performance, anything sort of vastly different? I mean, I guess business as usual is good. You obviously, changed your web tier as well. So, just general feedback after being live for a couple of months now.
In terms of stability of the product, we've had there's nothing that I can pin to the product. Environmentally, we've had challenges. In our organisation, BI is a function of financial operations and not part of the IT organisation. That presents a number of challenges in terms of being able to do root cause analysis with these type of upgrades. Exactly where BI or Business Objects Administration sits and where that is in relation to Basis and the overall SAP environment has been challenging, to say the least. Connectivity settings between the Business Objects environment and the BW environment, as an example, that's caused us a number of issues, but again, that's more of an organizational problem from an end-to-end visibility perspective than actually the product. The product itself, I've got no gripes. Lemira, again, it's not working and we don't know why, but that could equally be an environmental issue here, and we're struggling to find that. No, all in all, as far as the product goes, the only gripe I've had in the experience was just that access to support, and again, that's a geographical issue, and that's an issue that we experience whether we're doing ramp up or just day to day. Yeah.
Thanks, Josh. How are things your side?
And so from us, I think it's important to differentiate BAU versus new features. So and also how you're using the Business Object platform can vary quite differently. So I know, Corey, you guys probably use BW primarily as a data source, probably using different client tools to what we're using. And I find that actually does make a big difference in terms of whether it's really smooth or not. We use a lot of Webby. We process a Webby report nearly one every second and a half, 24/7. We have a very reasonably large volume of processing, and then we use the web service tier and dashboards very heavily as well. No Crystal, no Lemira yet, no Analysis Office or Design Studio or anything. So Webby and dashboards. And from a BAU perspective, our reports just kept running, right? And the upgrade was actually reasonably smooth. We just hit niggles in new features more than anything. And I think for the standard customer, you wouldn't actually see the niggles that we hit. It's just because of the specific configuration of how we're using the tools, and maybe it's a little bit outside the norm for SAP that we did hit some of those niggles, and some of them could have been hit in testing and we missed them. And so it's not something I would blame on the product so much as our coverage. And we were probably a little bit too easy to turn on new features without regression testing them in our environment. And I think it's an important lesson for customers to learn is obviously SAP will do a lot of regression testing and a lot of different configuration testing, but when it comes to your environment, if you are using things slightly differently or you have a specific load profile that might be different to other customers, then to take your time. And so that's been a lesson learned for us is and that's things like we hit some things with commentary. We actually moved to 4.2 because they rewrote the web services for dashboards, and that was actually massively successful. Like we were actually dropping web service calls, and we were having recurring error messages on our dashboards because of the web service availability. And with that rewrite, that just fixed it all, and performance improved considerably. But there are a few little niggles around legacy quas that we hit as well. So all in all, I think the reasons we moved to 4.2 were really successful. But there's some lessons there for us in terms of how we're going to run our next project. The only other thing, just to touch back on the ramp up, is that upgrading for us, more of a political environmental issue, is actually very arduous. We have desktop packaging that we need to include, and we push out client tools to 500 or 600 people, and so it's actually a massive thing to do, not just upgrade the software. And so when we got to, we actually went live with a pre-release, a pre-GA version, so we went live with SP2 or 4.2, and subsequently we've had a few things where we've gone, oh yeah, we've logged an incident, and they've gone, yeah, that's resolved in Service Pack 3, which is the GA version, and we've gone, so we're not going to be able to upgrade to that very quickly, but that's 6 months away. So we'll probably wait for SP4, SP5. To be honest, nothing's a showstopper. It's just these little niggles that did get addressed in GA, and we went live with a previous version. So that might be one of the things to think about when you're doing ramp up as well.
Not to confuse our very educated users, but SP2 was the GA one. I think you must have been on SP1.
Okay, thank you for correcting.
Because SP3 is coming out in August, so
yes, yep.
How's Josh got SP3? That's unfair. So SP2 is GA. Can we just hone in on commentary, because I know Corey, you guys looked at it as well, and it's an early stab at it. It didn't sort of have the my opinion of it didn't have the depth and the I guess the aggregate and awareness, or the context prompt awareness of in a document that we wanted. So as an example, if you ran a financial review report for 2015 and wrote a comment that sales were terrible, if you ran the same report for 2014 and maybe had a bump year, the same comment would have come up because it wasn't aware of the prompts in your document. Just want to talk around that for a bit, Corey, about why you guys decided to stop or to not implement it in production.
Yeah, I mean, like anybody else, I guess that's been around business objects for a while. I was very keen to see commentary, and as terribly geeky as it sounded, I was excited by it. It's something that's been wanted for a long time, and business objects never quite managed to be able to deliver it effectively. So I was very excited. I think maybe I had a preconceived idea of how it was going to work, particularly with how commentary works on OS and on mobile and whatnot. I expected a similar sort of experience. Obviously not on a touchscreen, but you know what I mean. And really, to say I was underwhelmed is to understate it. I was seriously disappointed. One particular thing that stuck to me is you have to go into design view of a report to be able to put a commentary on it, and you're not going to get that from your CEO or your CFO. I mean, and if your CFO or your senior managers don't have the ability to go in and make the comments, then the whole thing falls apart quite rapidly, in my view. We did struggle. We tried to. I think you can run the commentary database on audit or on its own database. We tried to do it in a standalone database and ran into connectivity issues. And I think, well, I don't think, we opted to remove it completely rather than try to run it out of audit. For the purposes of ramp up, we could have put a tick in the box to say yes, the new functionality worked, but as I say, it falls well short of my expectations in any business usable function, in my view.
Josh, I know you guys put it in and had some fun.
Yeah, so maybe in terms of my perception, I think commentary sounds like a really easy thing to do, and I have a bit of sympathy for the product team around this. So I think it's a hard line for them to walk in terms of developing something and when to release it to customers, or whether to keep developing and to get it to a place where it's maybe perceived by customers to be more mature. And I think it's a really difficult thing to do, and so my expectations were probably quite low coming into this release of it's really just a stake in the ground and it's a move in the right direction, but I didn't expect it to give us what we needed, maybe from a maturity perspective. So yeah, I think the lesson for me and something we did pass back to SAP was, and this is kind of in general for most new features, is it was enabled by default. And what we found, again, coming back to like our load profile and the way that our platform is used, is that effectively a new step was introduced every time a web report was refreshed. It would effectively go to that commentary service in the APS and figure out if there was commentary for the report so that it could return it to the report. And from a scalability perspective, we didn't think about that, and two, didn't really load test and pick up some of the issues that we hit with production, which was, like I said, we have dashboards calling web services to get Webby reports 24/7, every minute of the day, probably every 2 to 5 seconds of the day, and that service was a single point of failure for us in that we didn't cluster it, we didn't have multiple versions of that or that instances of that commentary service deployed, and so that became a bottleneck, and so our web service call started to back up, and the response of the system as a whole started to degrade because of that commentary call. So we ended up removing the service because one, we didn't need it. We weren't planning on introducing commentary as part of the upgrade. It was just something that came installed as default. And again, was a lesson learned for us in terms of testing those new features and understanding what they change under the hood. To be fair, 99% of customers would never see that because they don't have the load profile. I think ours is quite unique. We use it a very different way. So it's one of those things that only would have come out with us testing with our environment, and we did miss it as well.
So I mean, not going to problem-solving mode, but firstly, did you have that running in auditing or a standalone database?
I believe we put it in auditing. Yeah.
Okay, which is default if you have it on. And I mean, I guess from a problem-solving, if you had to implement it, it was just create multiple APS.commentaries or something like that, and give it enough resources.
We actually didn't get down to the detail. I'm not sure if it's a clusterable service, to be honest, either. So there was a bit of work that we hadn't done around architecture. I mean, we have, in terms of best practices, we have several different instances of APSs and multiple versions of those across, multi-node platform. So it was something that we didn't, again, I think, to be fair to SAP, it was a miss on our side in terms of thinking about where this would form part of the processing chain, understanding whether it was clusterable, how we could increase resources, all that kind of stuff we didn't do. So for us, it was easier to disable it in production and restore service than to kind of get into the depths. And it's something that we're not looking to use yet. We know it's in the platform and it's enabled in our dev system, so we can use the capability, but it's not something that we're promoting or using in anger. So.
A new feature that you said, Josh, that you have had success with is on parallel queries, query processing.
Yeah, so we have some serious power users who build 20 data providers.
Can I stop you there? Do you just want to give everybody a cliff note summary of what it is if they're not on 4.2?
Sure. Yeah. So thanks. So
education time.
Yeah. So web intelligence. So you can build multiple queries or multiple data providers, and in previous to 4.2, they ran sequentially. So say if you had 3 queries and the first one took 5 seconds and the second one took 5 seconds and the third one took 15 seconds, that would take 25 seconds to run in the APS or the processing services before returning the results. And then in 4.2, the default behavior changed. I believe it changed by default, actually. That's something to check, and someone else might know, but effectively you can turn on parallel processing, which would then actually reduce your runtime to just 15 seconds. So it would run those 3 in parallel. There are limits on that, which we've found out since, and each data type, so if you're using custom SQL or freehand SQL, or using Webby, or using HANA, or using Bex, they all have different limits in terms of how many can run sequentially at the same time. And that was something that we did enable by default, and we saw considerable report improvement or import performance improvement from a processing perspective across the board. So that was a good success.
And that's is Webby only, right?
Correct. Yeah. But again, for us, that's perfect because everything we do is Webby. And like I said, we have some instances where we have 20 queries in a Webby report, and a lot of that, I mean, to be honest, a lot of our queries are actually reasonably performant anyway. You know, the majority of them would run in under 10 seconds. It's really only when you start to hit your big hitters that they can add up, and if you're doing really crunchy reports, they're very intensive, then that can really add up and cause you to have a report that's going to run very slow. It was something that I was really happy to see as a new feature.
Corey, from a performance perspective, coming from 4.0 NetWeaver client to now 4.2 Tomcat, just overall performance, how have your end users found it? Have they found it the platform being more responsive, or is it business as usual? Because you pretty much majority coming off Bex queries, if I understand it correctly.
We've got a mix. We've got just on that point. So we've got quite a lot of Webby reports that are running off Bex queries. We've got Analysis Office. We've got Analysis OLAP. We've got a handful of dashboards, one Design Studio dashboard, and a little bit of Lumira. In terms of semantic layers, we have work against Bex queries directly, analytic or views in HANA, and also universes. But to go back to your comment on performance, we've had a marked improvement in performance across our platform, but that's down to really having the environment set up properly, if we can be so critical of the previous people. As you know, we're now multi-tiered or multi-node, and it's just been done according to the book rather than according to an SAP person or a BW person that doesn't really know how business objects strings together.
And that's, something funny you say that, but I was at 2 new customers, and it's so typical that business objects, and I think HANA so much as well, gets dumped with basis, because that's where SAP tech should get dumped. And you often hear the opinion of, we don't have business objects, but this is what we look after. Josh, in your previous life as a consultant, I'm sure you probably ran into that frequently as well.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if you take away all the labels, it's just making sure you've got the right people doing the right job, and you have the professionals doing the work that they need to do, I think. Yeah, I mean, from a web tier perspective, we've been on Tomcat for a long time, but we're lucky to have Java developers, quite senior Java devs that have kind of landed into our business objects team, and so we can leverage their skills for a lot of the Tomcat tuning. And with 4.2, it was actually upgraded to Tomcat 8, I believe. So
yep, there
was a lot of improvements from definitely from 6 to 8, and from 7 to 8 even. There was quite a lot of improvements. So we do a lot of tuning of Tomcat, and that's been quite successful for us as well.
Great. Something else that, from a new feature perspective, was shared objects in Webby, which there was quite a bit of hype about, and people were pretty excited about. Corey, I don't think you've tried to play with them yet. Josh, have you guys had a go with them? And once again, the education for everyone, what they are?
Yeah, sure. So shared object is effectively the ability to, when you have your Webby report and you have a block, whether it's a table or a chart, you can take that block and publish that as a shared element into a folder, so it becomes an object in your folder structure. and then a user can pick that up and they can put that into their report, but then it's centrally managed as that shared element. When you add that shared element to your new Webby report, it brings across any formulas, any variables, any data providers that the shared element needs to actually represent. And then there's also versioning, probably a basic versioning in that you can disconnect it, or you can have it connected, and then when the original developer of that shared element upgrades it or adds a new feature, you can choose to upgrade to the new version or to leave your current version as well. So there was a lot of interest from our end users on that. To be fair, I think we're still we're taking a cautious approach to those, and we're still doing a lot of testing around how that's going to work in practice from a security perspective as well. Just working through some of that at the moment. So we're still in the early stages of that.
Is that something that's going to interest you guys, Corey?
Yeah, we've had a bit of a play with it. Really, in terms of making repeatable templates for our end users. We haven't done a lot with it yet, but yes, it's definitely on the list.
Cool. So
the other thing I wanted to touch on from a new feature that I thought was really good is the bringing up Webby to the parity of all the other tools around HANA connectivity and online HANA connectivity. So we're early on in our HANA journey, and we have a development environment implemented, and so we're still kind of doing basic testing around this. But I thought from a platform parity perspective, that was really important. I think now all the go forward tools now have HANA online capability, which effectively means that any slicing or dicing or addition of objects to the query or etc. will force a refresh back to the database and not really preserve any data at the data provider level, which is how the rest of, any other data source would work in Webby. And Crystal had that from Crystal, I think from 4.0. Lumira Design Studio has that. Excelsius isn't a go-forward tool, so that's not going to get that anytime soon, I don't believe. But Webby was the one that was missing, and I think that really kind of helped put the stake in the ground in terms of Webby's future. And I think there were some customers that had a perception that Webby wasn't really getting much love through the 4.0, 4.1 releases, and we definitely saw a lot of development in Webby in 4.2. And I think that was reassuring for myself personally, is that Webby's here to stay and is going to continue to get innovation. So.
Hate to quote the Jamie Oswald experience on this, but for them as a big HANA shop, I think one of their primary upgrades to look at 4.2 was that direct HANA connectivity, because they invest so much time on those HANA models. So therefore, what is the semantic layer? Their path was, our HANA views, because that's where all our dev is, and that gets used across the organization, is going to be our semantic layer. Lumira, Webby's there, strong Webby skills internally, but Webby's there just as your presentation layer only.
Yes, yeah, and I think so for myself, we when we did our evaluation of HANA, we were really that was what we identified, is that today our investment is in the universe. And tomorrow our investment will be in HANA calculation views. With obviously with the data that is in HANA. Otherwise, we'll just continue to use universes for other stuff. But predominantly, we want to move to HANA calculation views as well.
Corey, from a BW and HANA, very BW centric historical customer, is it something you're looking to? Is to start hitting those HANA views directly from Webby, or you always? What are the plans there?
We already do, and we already did prior to the upgrade. I've got a team of very experienced BW people, and they're all very keen to get in and do some modelling with HANA. And I've got a handful of die-hard business objects people. So our discussions on the semantic layer are often quite animated, to say the least. And there's been plenty of DSLayered podcasts on the one universe or the one semantic layer. We do use it, but we're not an exclusively SAP environment. So
you mean those exist?
Sorry?
I said, you mean those exist? Tongue in cheek. Carry on.
So I don't advocate using Bex as a semantic layer. I know you can, and I know that there are people that swear by it. Our licensing has complications in terms of using HANA as a semantic layer, and where you can do that modeling. Where BW, was it HANA for, well, you know what our license is better than I do, but it's basically BW on HANA. So that basically means all our modeling needs to happen in BW, and only modeling we can do in HANA Studio is to expose that data to reporting tools. I think there's a bit of grey area of how far you can stretch that, and whether you can actually use analytic views to the same extent as you could a universe, or calculated view, any views, you know. And I'm, as you know, I'm nearly 20 years experience in business objects. I love the universe, and it's going to take a lot to convince me that it's not a good thing. As I say, we're in an environment where we've got both SAP and non-SAP, and the fact that with 4.2 we have linked universes coming back, that's still extremely powerful to me. I'm a fan of the universe, yeah. We'll use not an anger.
Okay.
How's that a good answer?
Mind blown.
I just want to touch though. So Corey just mentioned linked universes, and that again, that's from a new feature perspective, something that's one of the ones that we just started using straight away, and we're seeing a lot of success with. So we, anyone who's watched the show for a while knows that I'm very passionate about universe design and best practice universe design, and we and that's kind of, and I've had to make my colleagues suffer with some of my standards and how we, in a very rigorous approach to how we build universes internally, but we've seen a lot of success, I think, with that standardization. And one of the things we do is expose a lot of common objects through every universe that we build, and so that was a really great candidate to move towards linked universes. So we have we probably have about 40 universes of considerable size, and all of them have a good several hundred objects in them, these common objects, and so maintenance, you can imagine, of that becomes quite difficult. That's not my job, that's one of my colleagues, so it was a really great time saver for him, and that ability to link that in and make that available in every universe, and maintain a core universe was really beneficial for us. So I think that was a really great new feature that if you use a lot of universes, and then that's something you can take advantage of as well.
And that's scaled appropriately, no gremlins?
Nothing we've seen. Yeah, it's been has just worked. So.
That's great. So just conscious of the time, guys, but can you believe we're in July already? It's bizarre. I almost beat someone up this morning. I was going off to an early morning work session at the coffee shop, and I saw my first Christmas advert. Can you believe it? On the 5th of July. I mean, I was horrified. But anyway, so we are in July, which means SP3, which Josh is already unbelievably is due in August, which is the next big, excuse me, the next big service pack for business objects. A lot of for Corey and I, who were in the global BI SAC in Vancouver, got a little sneak peek at this, and I think the big driver from what I picked up, and there's more functionality, but a huge bunch of the Webby Java, basically the Java web component of Webby's looking like it's going away, and meant to be sort of 70-80% now with dynamic HTML. That sparked a lot of interest for a lot of people, obviously with Chrome giving Java the boot. What are your guys' thoughts from working at two very large organizations? The thought of getting rid of Java, in your environments?
I'll talk to that first. So we have several hundred users using Webby, and by default they all use DHTML, and we train them in DHTML, and then we have a very small set of users, probably about 20 to 30, that use Java or Webby Rich Client. Most of our users use DHTML. The biggest issue for me, pretty much the only issue that regularly bites us, is conditional formatting. That's the only thing that needs to be added to DHTML, and pretty much we have no issues. And that's really the only thing. And then there's some data sources I think that are only available in Java and not DHTML. So again, based on our lessons, from 4.2, I think it's something that I'm really looking forward to, and it's definitely the right direction for the product we're moving in. But we would take a slowly approach to that in terms of converting over our existing users. I don't think they're going to remove Java, from what I've heard from SP3. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just bringing it up to parity before they do that removal in maybe 4 SP5. So we'll just continue to use DHTML predominantly, but we'll make an assessment as to when that's ready to switch over. Then we'll probably push for our users to do that. So 'cause that does help us in terms of just the supportability of the platform.
Yeah. On your side, Corey?
For us, we use Java quite heavily. All our developers are using the Java plugins.
I think Bex is only supported with Java anyway, isn't it, Corey?
Sorry?
You can't use Bex as a data source in DHTML, I believe. So you kind of have to on your side.
We haven't even tried. So
I don't think it works yet. Because I've just been building some Bex stuff recently, and we've had to use Java. So
I'll take your word for it. I'm not going to pretend. Java does present its issues in a large organisation, particularly across all different types of software packages and whatnot. So I think conceptually I'm keen on it, but again, it's really it ain't broke, so I'm not too concerned about it right at the moment.
Cool. So some closing thoughts, guys. Coming to the top of the hour on our time. Maybe any nuggets of advice to anybody looking to upgrade a 4.2. I think hopefully we can all agree that the platform is stable and it's a good place to go. Any nuggets? Obviously ramp-up's a unique situation where you are getting SP0 of a software, and you realize that. But just part of your recent journeys and the upgrade, any advice, tips? What are your key points for people looking about starting to do it? Corey, start with you, sir.
I'm surprised you haven't touched on promotion management.
Wait, that's my key point. That's my key closing point.
Key point. I think side by side is the safest and most easiest way to mitigate your risk, and I would, after my experience most recently, advocate for that or recommend that approach with quite a lot of vigor.
Cool. Mr. Fletcher?
Yes, I'll counter that slightly and just I mean we were really happy with the ramp up process, but I think it doesn't work for everyone, and I think they only make it available for a certain number of customers. So I think go into it with eyes open. If you've never done one before and you don't have a burning need to be on the latest version because it's going to fix something that's critical to your organization, I would wait, to be honest, because a lot of things do get ironed out in ramp up still, because that's where you've got most likely you will have large customers really stress testing this environment, and they will pick up these little niggles and feed that back in, and so by the GA version a lot of that stuff does get resolved. So I think take a balanced approach to that, but I can definitely agree with your comments that 4.2 from a stability perspective I've been with BusinessObjects since 6.5, through XIR 1 and 2 and 3 and 3.1 and 4 and 4.1, and 4.2 was just a breeze, and that's not what we saw with 4.0 and 4.1 GA releases. So
cool. So my I guess my one main word of warning is promotion management, as Corey alluded to, which unfortunately doesn't work. It doesn't scale if you go side by side. In the past there was if you're coming from XI, there's upgrade management tool that you can use. Before the SP, the GA version of 4.2, you could still use the UMT hack. If you don't know what that is, just Google that and you'll find that quickly. Unfortunately, they've blocked that with SP2, but by all accounts, they're bringing that back for SP3, so you can use a thick client tool to move content across. Once again, we've just busy going through the process with a Forward 1 to Forward 2 customer with promotion management and having a heap of issues with it as well. So just go in there, eyes wide open, like very wide open, if you can see my screen, because it does take longer than it expects, unfortunately. And the only other thing I'd say is just be aware of a lot of external factors, whether that's network, database, file repository. Those are all the things just from a greater infrastructure. If you're dealing with if you are a large SAP instance, and there's SAP auths, and there's BW auths, and then there's AD auths, and there's network shares, and there's all that other stuff that as much as you can be isolated in your business objects world, you seriously reliant on other people from an infrastructure. And time again, we come into fixed performance issues, and it's always business objects to blame, but generally it's somewhere in the chain. So just be aware of all those pieces in the chain, make nice with all those people, and understand that it does affect your landscape. That's it from me.
Cool.
1 minute to go. Anything else, guys? Any shout-outs?
No, I'm good.
Nope.
Mr. Fletcher? Nope.
All good.
Okay.
I think we're good. It's wrapped.
Well, thanks so much, guys. Thank you, Corey, for your time, sir. The Lord of Gastown in Auckland, Mr. Fletcher, always an honor.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks everyone for watching. And I've got some homework in the show notes. I'll figure out about conditional formatting and Bex and DHTML with SP3 if it's actually coming out or not, because I don't know. So if I find links to the sort of ramp up notes or whatever. That's it. Thanks for watching. Please put a comment if you want to comment, and see you next time. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
This podcast is hosted and sponsored by EV Technologies. Visit us on the net at savethecms.com.